Welcome everyone to the Ontario Caregiver Organization's webinar series. These webinars bring together caregivers and subject matter experts to explore topics of interest to caregivers. We do this to support and engage chosen family, friends, neighbors, really anyone who's caring for someone else. My name is Katie Muirhead, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. We begin this gathering by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we're on today. And while we meet on a virtual platform with people joining us from across the province, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land which we each call home. The land that I'm standing on is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging this reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendships of Indigenous peoples. As team members at the Ontario Caregiver Organization, we are learning about the lands from which we work and exploring how we can be meaningful allies and how we can support the recommendations from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. We invite you to take a moment to reflect on the land where you are. And if you're not familiar with that, we'll be sharing an interactive map that tells you which traditional territory your city or town sits on. And you can find that at native-land.ca. So our webinar today is called Tips for Caregivers to Safely Assist with Mobility and Navigate Change. Finding yourself in a caregiving role and not knowing how to safely move, adjust, or transfer people can prove very challenging and sometimes risky. Caregivers may not realize that they can risk their own physical health while doing their best to negotiate these new tasks. So today we're going to hear from two caregivers that are joining us to share their experiences and tips and strategies that have worked for them. And we're also going to learn some tips for moving your loved ones safely and using in-home devices that you might find helpful. So we've got three speakers joining us today, and I'm pleased to introduce you to Taryn Bolt. Taryn is a senior manager and registered occupational therapist at the Mississauga-Halton Regional Learning Center. Taryn brings over a decade of educational and clinical experience in community healthcare to her current role. And she's going to be joining us in just a moment to share more helpful tips and information. But first, I'd like to introduce you to our caregivers, Shara Inote and Chris Rosati. So these are two caregivers that are joining us today to share their lived experience. So Shara spent about 15 years caring for her father with dementia, and she brings a wealth of experience and practical tips and strategies to share with all of you today. And Chris is a passionate advocate for caregiving and has spoken frequently on his experiences caring for his wife, Jane. So I'm going to invite Shara to join us first now to share her experience. And I'm going to turn off so you can continue.
Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you all for taking time out of your busy days. I 100% understand how hard it is to sometimes carve out that time. So thank you. It's an honor to be here. And my goal and the goal of the organization, which offers so many great resources, is just to share some tips and tricks and share our journey. My journey started 15 years ago with my father, who was diagnosed with dementia. And we had three guiding principles throughout this journey, never knowing how it's going to turn out and what the next corner is going to bring. So one of the guiding principles was providing him his dignity and sense of independence throughout his journey. The goal was to keep him in his own home as long as possible, and making sure also then The second guiding principle was providing safety and functionality to the home. And then finally, just focusing in on health, which came way later in the journey for us, especially caregiver health, my own health, because it's hard to take the time and determine what you need and to ask for help. So those are the three things that were guiding principles for us. And, you know, with regards to the journey, I mean, the beginning was simple things that, not simple, I mean, things that were to help him have his dignity in his own home and have a sense of independence. So that included providing directional signs throughout the house, showing, you know, directing him to the toilet, really decluttering. So all that was out on the kitchen counter, for instance, and the bathroom counter were just the things he needed to avoid confusion, so he could operate and take care of all his daily living requirements. As the journey went on, it became things like finding timers for the stove so he could still feel like he could cook and take care of himself. When we moved from that stage to pre-made meals, then it was finding a microwave that had a dial instead of a keypad, so it was much more easy to operate and not so many steps to negotiate. So you know, throughout the house, like I said, decluttering, moving out, tripping hazards, putting things on the stairs, little stickers on the stairs so he could see the next stair. Blocking out, this was way before the era of technology that we have now, by the way. So we had to be very creative to help address his needs at the time. So when it came to the TV, it was the remote was overwhelming. So literally we taped the buttons of the remote with painting tape or whatever, and just left the buttons that he needed, which was channel up, channel down, the power and the volume. Automatic lights, you know, setting automatic timers. So at night, if the lights were forgotten to be turned off, they were turning off on their own. And then eventually locks on the doors and just sliding locks above eye level for my dad, just to avoid him going out of the house without us knowing. But then it transitioned into door alarms and baby monitors. And again, before all the Bluetooth technology we have. So finding the things that worked within a certain distance was always fun. And finding the humor in it all too. Like all of the steps, there was communication. It was open communication. There was transparency, and it was a discussion with him to a point where he could discuss what would help and why we're doing things. It was never forced. It was always just an information of what's coming next and how to navigate the new changes in the house. And he lives in an old house, so there are single pane windows. So eventually it was putting plexiglass on the windows and finding a way to put a barrier on the bathtub, because in the night, he would sometimes go into the bathroom and then crawl into the bathtub thinking it was his bed. So finding a barrier on the bathtub, opening and closing doors as we needed them. So there were 3 rooms available to him. And in the night, the 2 rooms that he didn't require, we closed the doors and had sliding locks at the top. And then he would only have access to the bathroom. So in the night, with night lights as well, he would know that's the bathroom that's the room he's looking for. So that's scratching the surface. There was so much in 15 years, and every time he changed and his journey changed, we also had to pivot and be creative and find the joy in this journey. I would never do anything different. We kept him in his home for his full journey. I wouldn't say it's easy, but this is where paying attention to your own health really is important. When you're in the throes of it, I understand it's hard to step back and say, what do I need? but it took me many years to actually ask for help. And we ended up having some help come in a few hours a day. Really, that made a big difference on caring for myself so I could care for my father as well. But it's hard. It's hard to recognize that. And I would just really encourage those of you who are in the throes of caregiving to really ask. It takes a village, and you can't do this alone. So there's lots of resources out there. Ontario Caregiving Organization being an amazing source of resources and support. So that would be my one advice, is to really just to take care of yourself as well. I really, I could go on forever and ever, but there's so many things. So in the question and answer, please feel free to ask any questions that you have. And really, thank you so much for your time. And I'm going to pass this back to Katie. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Shara. It's always great to hear some tips and tricks. And we didn't give you a ton of time to do it, but we appreciate you sharing your time and your story. And she will be back for Q&A. So if you have any questions, or if anything that Shara shared what resonated, she's going to be joining us again in the end. So I want to take this opportunity now to invite Chris to join us. So he's going to be able to, you can turn your camera on, Chris, and unmute yourself. Wonderful. And Chris is going to share with all of you a little bit more about his caregiving experience and some tips and tricks that you might find helpful in your role as a caregiver.
Hello, everyone, and greetings from Nanaimo, British Columbia. We're going through some very difficult times here with wildfires and electricity out. So my technology is a bit compromised. I'm so glad that you can hear me, and I'm so very grateful and honored to be with you today. I thank the OCO team, Marnie, for the invitation to speak to you all, because it's such important work that you're doing, and you're all blessed people. So hopefully there's a gem that I can share that might be of some assistance to you, drawing from my own experience as a caregiver. There are some similar things to what Shara had to say. We put our own spin on it, so you may hear some similar things that may, I think, point to the importance of them and the value of them. So my experiences, in 2021, my wife Jane, of 37 years, was diagnosed quite out of the blue with terminal cancer and was given 6 months to live. And those of you who've been in those shoes know it's quite an unsettling bit of news, particularly if you're not part of the medical community, and it comes very much out of the blue. So we had to do a great deal of work to try to get our heads around it. And we recognized that we couldn't change the outcome, but we just might be able to manage the experience. So we devoted our time to that. And we too came up with guiding principles. We had an overarching guiding principle and then working principles underneath. And the overarching guiding principle was to make sure that Jane was never, ever afraid. She was never alone. She was surrounded by love and beauty, and that, God willing, she could pass away at home, which was a place that she loved. The sort of sub-guiding principles that enabled us to work with that was that, one, we were going to love everyone under whose care Jane fell, because we felt that if we loved them, they would love Jane. And this was going on during COVID, and it was hard enough as it was. So we removed judgment. We just wanted to share love with them. And when caregivers came into our home, we loved them. When we went to the hospital for chemo and for blood and those sorts of things, we tried to be open to the love of the experience. Caregivers and medical professionals are special people that work under very difficult circumstances. And then you add on COVID on top of that. We wanted to remove judgment from our experience and just go with whatever God put before us. Two, like Cheryl, we laughed as much as we could. It was horrible, but we thought if we were open to it and we turned our head this way, some of the stuff that happened was very funny, and it was. And that really helped us a lot. Laughter was always a part of our relationship to begin with. So it wasn't as though we had to lean too far out of our normal zone. And then three, it was up to me to basically to man up. I was going to lean into this experience. I was going to, and I did, I was going to hold her hand every step of the way. I was right beside her every step of the way. And I wanted to be open to the profound nature of what this was, because to my way of thinking, this is as real an experience as one could ever be a part of, maybe equal only to childbirth. And this was the love of my life. And I wanted to be there with her every step of the way, and I was. And I learned a lot about myself and my life and life in general and spirituality. It changed me considerably for the better. I feel I'm a better man for it. And I wanted to be very intentional about it. So there was a lot of horrible stuff. And I know, Shara's experience of caring for her father for 16 years. My dad had Alzheimer's. I was part of the team for that. It's a tough thing to do that, to sustain that kind of leaning into it for a long time. I was at it for about 7 months, and which is a long time and a short time. It felt long time when we were in it, and then when she passed, it was over, and it felt like a blink of an eye. So it's a very kind of singular thing, but I would urge those of you who are either entering into it or into it to think about what are the gems, what are the learnings, where's my personal growth, what is good about this. And I found a lot that was very good. I refer to them as gifts. So I was Jane's primary caregiver, but I came to understand that I was basically her primary care coordinator. As a caregiver, I became, anyway, I was like communications director. I was pharmacist. I was chauffeur. I was bum wiper. I was everything. It was much broader and much deeper than I had anticipated. And I think if you just find yourself entering into that, thinking about that, about the breadth of the work that you do as a caregiver, and when I thought of coordinator, I thought part of that was, I thought it was important to draw on the supports to help me help Jane. It wasn't in her best interest nor mine for me to try to be a superhero and do everything or be territorial about it. And there are, as Shara said, tremendous supports out there. There are so many loving, wonderful people in the medical and support community out there that became our friends, and who we loved, that helped make it easier, so that the support enabled me for my own self-care. And the self-care piece was a big part of it. I couldn't help if I was a wreck. So, and this world was completely unfamiliar to me. I had no idea what I was getting into. So the concept of being coordinator and drawing upon support really helped me and helped me with my self-care. And the other thing too, my final point, and this is something that I never contemplated until it happened, which was caregiving didn't end when Jane passed away. It changed. I had all the affairs of our life together to deal with, the cleaning everything up and dealing with that while I was grieving. It was in many ways more difficult than caregiving while Jane was alive. And you're dealing with your own grief, and you're dealing with everybody else's grief. And everybody wants to contact you, and you have to create, there's taxes and wills and probate and all sorts of administration, and people calling and saying, I want to come over and I baked you a pie and, all that stuff. By the way, if anybody needs a casserole, I have a ton of them in the fridge. So it was beautiful, but it's a lot to deal with. And I was grieving. So self-care remained important. And it took a long time before I even had the time to reflect on what had happened. I'm in British Columbia right now. Jane passed away about 15 months ago. And I was just at a retreat on a beautiful island called Cortes Island, where I finally got the time to sit down and process this. So after passing, the caregiving doesn't end. It morphs into something quite much more intense. It was nice where I did have the opportunity to reflect, so I could think about, in part, what were some of the gifts that I got out of this experience, and there were a multitude of them. And I'm again, I just want to echo the reach out for supports, the supports that I got from St. Joe's. The clinical nurse specialist was a saint, and I will always love her. Maria Rugg, she was absolutely brilliant, because I was a babbling goofball, and very gently with her hand in mine said, you can do this and you can do that. We'll get you this. And she just was very kind and soft and gentle for me. And there's loads of people out there doing that work, and they're in your community. And I urge you to access them. And also the good folks at the Dorothy Lay Hospice. Jane was an outpatient there. She did pass away at home. We kept her home. She had a couple of stints in the hospital. It unfolded the way we had hoped it would, in part, well, to a great extent, to the good folks at St. Joe's Hospital and the Dorothy Lay Hospice. It was a team, and the team was filled with kindness, and it really helped me a lot. So that's it. And thank you.
Thank you, Chris. It's always difficult sometimes to share your personal experience, and we so appreciate you and Shara coming and speaking about your personal lives and your caregiving roles. And certainly you'll be joining us as well during the Q&A to answer any questions or comments that our audience has. So I'm going to invite you, Chris, to turn your mic off and your camera off. And I'm going to invite Taryn to join us now. And Taryn is going to speak to us from her professional experience, offer some practical tips and strategies which might help you in your caregiving role. And as she's getting her slides up and sorted out, I will take this opportunity to share that for folks in the Mississauga-Halton region, Taryn and the team at the Regional Learning Center are offering some hands-on practice drop-in sessions about some of the information that's going to be shared. So if anyone would like to take some of these tips and put them into action and practice them hands-on, those sessions are going to be next Thursday, August 24th, and we will put a link in the chat and in the follow-up notes as to how you can join Taryn and her team and get some hands-on practice. So I'm going to turn it over to you now, Taryn.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Katie. And thank you also as well to the caregivers who shared their perspectives with us. I really appreciate hearing those. And it just really reiterates for me how important it is to be adaptable and how hard it can be. And we know there's so many facets of caregiving. So really, as the two previous caregivers have told us, so really I'm going to be focusing in today on our yellow bubble. So thinking about your physical health and wellness while providing care, because sometimes this is something that kind of goes by the wayside for folks. So what am I hoping that you'll get from this today? Really just that you'll be getting some practical information, thinking about how you can move your care recipient a little bit more safely, and also helping you to identify some risky techniques as well, and thinking about what are some alternatives. So if you're helping somebody just, going from sit to stand, What are some of the different and safer ways that we can do this? And so again, with this presentation, I always like to say, this is really tools for your toolbox. So some of this may not apply to your specific situation. You might think, oh, that doesn't make sense for the person that I'm caring for, and that's totally okay. So you're the expert, on the person that you're caring for and their situation in many cases. So really take what's good and leave what doesn't work for you. So as an occupational therapist, I used to go into people's homes quite frequently and give them suggestions, on how to make the care environment safer, to recommend equipment, funding, and, different things like that. And a lot of times having somebody come to your home, and suggest that you make changes to the way that you live or the way that you do things can be difficult. So I've had a lot of difficult conversations with folks, and, there's a lot of emotional pieces and stages of caregiving. Some people, embrace suggestions for change, and other people, find it really difficult and they don't really feel ready for it. So I know I've definitely had conversations with caregivers where perhaps we've suggested a hospital bed to help better provide care. And that's really upsetting for the caregiver. If you've been sharing a bed with your partner, your loved one for the past 20 or 30 or 40 years, and now, that person needs a hospital bed, that can be really emotional. And there can be a natural resistance to change there. And so in a lot of those conversations, I usually, tell people to ask themselves why. So if this sounds familiar, it can be helpful too if you notice your resistance to things. It can be helpful to notice the resistance and think about, why am I resistant to that suggestion? Sometimes it's denial. Sometimes folks think, it's stigmatizing to have assistive technology. Sometimes, we just don't want to accept the need for help with something that used to be done independently. Sometimes you might want to be making those changes. You're really open, but the person you're caring for or other people in your family are not, and they don't want, the stair lift or the other, different things that get suggested. And again, lots of times people have a really strong desire to maintain the things normal in their home because that's kind of their safe and secure place. And at the end of the day, there's a balance. And so the way I like to think about it is that everybody has the right to live with risk, but you also need to have accessibility within your home as well. So we want to think about your safety, how to keep yourself safe, as well as the person you're caring for and anyone who's coming in. So, as Chris said, having members of the team come in and provide care, as home care workers, they're guests in your home, but your home is also their workplace. So we want to make sure that everybody involved in your care team, including you, is staying safe. So one of the things, if you do a little search on the internet for ways to move somebody safely, you'll end up with some variation of body mechanics. So you'll see things about body mechanics, and basically it's just foundational information or knowledge on how you can help somebody move more safely. So I'll just leave these up here for a minute, and you can read through them at your leisure. I will just note that twisting, so that we have, avoiding twisting by keeping what you're doing straight in front of you. Twisting isn't bad, in and of itself, but it isn't smart to be twisting your back if you're overreaching or supporting a load. So keeping all of these pieces in mind, when you're helping somebody to move or providing care at home, if you're, helping with dressing or toileting or bathing, anything like that, these are all really important key pieces to remember to help keep yourself safe. I will say, though, that while body mechanics is important, and you'll find lots of information about it on the internet, if what you're doing is fundamentally not safe, and I visited lots of homes where, the caregiver was really just lifting that person up, then good body mechanics is not going to protect you. So basically, body mechanics isn't going to protect you if what you're doing is fundamentally unsafe. And so sometimes I do talk to caregivers and they say, well, I've been doing it this way. I go to the gym, I work out, and, this doesn't hurt me, so it must be safe. But we know that, just because you're doing something and it doesn't hurt you in that moment, it doesn't mean that it's safe to continue doing over and over and over again. So that's something that we also want to be really cognizant of. And really, I just want to leave you with the idea that no technique is safe. So whatever you're doing is not safe if you're taking on most of that person's weight. So if you, aren't able to remember any of the other things we talked about today, this is really the big one for me. We want to make sure that you're assisting, but not doing everything, manually. And there's lots of research that recommends manual lifting should be avoided because it's going to be putting you as a caregiver and also home care workers as well at risk for a lot of injury. So how do we know if what we're doing isn't safe? Always a good question. And chances are you are, thinking about all these things already. So this is just kind of a visual for you. But we always want to be thinking about the person that we're caring for. How are they doing today? Are they ready? Can they follow directions? Do they have dementia or cognitive, impairment, and they maybe can't follow some directions? What's their mobility like? Are they able to move? Can they shuffle? In standing, can they lean forward when they're sitting? Do they have hearing aids or glasses that they need, to help them get up and about? We also want to think about you. So you as the caregiver, how are you doing? How is your body feeling today? Are you feeling rested? Did you get enough sleep? Are you focused? Are you rushing? Are you using some of those good body mechanics, or do you know you have a lot of things to do and you're just trying to get the task done, which happens a lot. The environment as well, so your home or the place where care is being provided, do you have everything that you need? Is everything kind of at the right height for you, or are you bent or hunched over a queen size or king size bed trying to provide some care and thinking, wow, the bed is really low, my back is really sore. And then finally, the task. Do I understand kind of what needs to happen? And then also, is this something that has to happen right now? Can I take a step back and reapproach or try again? So we always want to be thinking about kind of those pieces to let us know, is what we're doing risky? And you may be thinking, okay, well, that's fair. But what are some of the things that I shouldn't be doing? What are some of the risky techniques that we don't want to be using? So we will go over those as well. So risky technique number one is usually what we call the hook arm lift, or the chicken arm lift, I guess, for lack of a better word. And so you may recognize some of these techniques as things that you're doing. And I don't want to shame anybody or make anybody feel badly, but really just to bring some more awareness to some of the things that you may be doing without thinking, because it's unsafe for you and probably unsafe also for the person that you're caring for. So if you want to take a look at that and, kind of think to yourself, what could be some of the risks there? So obviously, if you said that they're using pretty poor body mechanics, the caregiver can get hurt. They're in a pretty awkward position there. He's trying to hook his arm under this lady, and she's really leaned back. She's not helping as well. So this can also really cause pain and injury for the client and for the person, trying to get that person up. So we would want to be changing our strategy, and we'll talk about in a few slides what you could potentially do there. So our risky technique number two, and I see this a lot, and I have seen it a lot, and this is not a clinical term, but we just kind of call it the zombie. And so you may have someone in your life who puts their hands out and they want you to come and kind of grab their hands and pull them up. So what do you think might be some of the risks here? You can kind of take a look at that. And if you're thinking, well, they can't use their hands to help them push up from the chair, and maybe that caregiver is doing quite a bit of work, you're absolutely right. It's also really easy to become unbalanced, so that you could pull somebody up and then whoop, fall over yourself, and now you are both potentially injured. Also, there's a high risk of injury for your shoulders, your back, your elbow, for everyone who's involved in this. So again, this isn't necessarily a great technique to be utilizing. We would really want to encourage the person to be helping as much as possible. All right, so we'll move on. I've given you a few things that really aren't that great to do. And so you may be thinking, okay, well, what can I do? So we do have a video, and this will be sent out, but we can go over this and just kind of see, if this may be something that's a bit more helpful. And again, tools for the toolbox, so it may well not make sense for the person you are caring for.
Sit to stand with one carer. Hi, Maureen. I'm going to help you stand up this morning. What I'd like you to do is to put your hands on the armrests, please. That's right. And wriggle your bottom further to the front of the chair, all the way to the front of the chair. That's good. I need to get you to tuck your feet back and bring your legs width apart. That's right. Good. Okay, I'm going to put my hand here and around the back. What I'd like you to do is put your head up, look forward where we're going, and I'd like you to rock forward on ready, steady, and then stand when I say stand, okay? So we're going to ready, steady, stand. Good, well done. So we're going to ready, steady, stand. Good, well done.
And again, that's not necessarily a technique that would work for everybody. And if you think back to those kind of areas of risks, you can see that that person who was getting the help was able to move, was able to follow directions, and was very mobile. So one of the last risky techniques that we want to cover off and really talk about is what we call, the bear hug. And so this is really, you're getting that person to put their arms around your neck, and you're basically, hoisting them up. And so we really want to be avoiding that, obviously, because having somebody's hands around your neck is going to be very unsafe as well. And basically at this point, you're lifting that person. So a lot of times when something like this is happening, we want to think about, how can we change the environment? How can we modify what we're doing to make it a bit safer? So avoiding that, bear hug transfer with the person's arms around your neck. You never want anybody's arms around your neck to prevent that risk of injury. So a safer alternative is sometimes looking for different types of equipment. So maybe we need, a transfer board like they have here in the picture. And now this person is more involved in their transfer, whereas if you look at the picture before, they don't really look like they're helping. They're not very engaged. So thinking about how can we engage and enable the person that we're caring for, and thinking too about good body mechanics. You can see now the caregiver has a nice split stance and bent knees and is protecting their back. My very last one that comes up a lot that we like to cover up is boosting somebody up with a soaker pad. So a lot of times folks may have underneath them a soaker pad that's really just there for incontinence to protect your bed. But that often gets used to move people around in bed, up or down, or to kind of reposition them. And if you're moving somebody who really can't help you, then you're going to really be lifting a lot of weight as you try and lift them up or down the bed. So one of the things that can be helpful really and a safer alternative is something called a slide sheet. So that is something that you could use. Either it stays on the bed. I have two pictures that I've taken here of the different kinds of equipment that we have at the Regional Learning Center. So you could have something that makes onto the bed, or the one on the left that's more like a circle scarf, and it's very slippery and would just help reposition that person a lot easier. And I don't get paid to say this, it's just a product that I like. So that's it for me. I think I'm a little bit over. But again, we just wanted to let everybody know about some of those hands-on practice. We don't want you to feel alone. I know this is a lot of information in a short amount of time. So if you're in the Mississauga-Halton area, you're more than welcome to come down and come and hang out with us, and we'll go over some different types of equipment and do some of that hands-on practice. So I think we'll invite at this point our caregivers to come back and do a little bit of question and answer.
Yeah. So thanks so much, Taryn and Shara and Chris, for joining us today and providing some really practical, tangible tips that hopefully we can take away, and some really thoughtful and lovely personal stories. We so appreciate your time with us today. So thank you for joining us. So we are going to, oh, thanks, Chris. So we are going to move to some Q&A. So we've got lots of time for folks that are on the call. If you have questions, please do put those into the chat box. And I'm going to sort of filter them through to our guests today to answer. And we did have, and I have to do this looking at another device, unfortunately. But we did have a comment around supporting somebody with mobility challenges when they have things like dementia or other cognitive impairments. It can be kind of tricky sometimes, right? Where folks aren't maybe understanding the instructions that we provide, or maybe aren't as agreeable to the instructions that we provide. So I'm wondering if there's any maybe share, I don't know if this is something as a caregiver to a person with dementia, if you had any experience with this or any tips that you found helpful when trying to move and encourage your dad. And this is my dog. Apologies, everyone.
Nice of him to join us. That's awesome. Yeah, actually, so As the journey progressed, my dad had difficulties walking. We were lucky for most of the journey that he was physically able, but it came to a point where he was having difficulties walking and standing on his own, and also navigating stairs. So everybody's different, and with my father, we found that breaking it down, like continuing to communicate, because even though there's dementia, they're still there, and they may not show that they're understanding. You may think that they have no idea, but it's still like you would with anybody else, saying, okay, let's stand. Okay, let's stand. And you might have to say it a few times, and you may have to try at different times. And I think that was one of the things that was a learning experience for me, is patience, because things don't happen on your schedule. In this case, it was on it. And we do it also with kids, like, come on, get your t-shirt on or whatever. And it doesn't happen necessarily when you want it to happen. So just also giving, taking a bit of time away and going back and trying again, and taking a bit of time away and going back and trying again. And I know that it can be quite frustrating. But it's just meeting. I found what was helpful with my dad was just meeting him where he was at and when he was ready, but also that communication, constantly explaining what's happening, not just forcing him to do something. We're going to stand because we have to go to the bathroom, or we're going to stand because it's time for lunch. And that constant communication, and providing him that dignity as well, and respect throughout the journey was what worked for us. But like I said, everybody's different and everybody's in a different place.
No, that's a really great point, and thank you for sharing that. Everyone's experience is different, and so we're not going to be able to answer really specific questions about people's specific needs. But I think what you've shared there is really helpful in meeting people where they're at, and having a bit of patience. I think that's a skill we learn very quickly as caregivers. And I don't know, Taryn or Chris, if you have anything you want to add to that around tips or strategies around the communication part. Moving somebody is one thing, but what are some maybe pointers or things to consider when we're communicating with the people as we're kind of getting in their space and helping them and transferring them, moving them, doing those things? So maybe Chris, you're unmuted. Did you have any thoughts on that? If not, I'll pop it over to Taryn.
Just an extension of what we saw in the video, which was being very clear on why and what we were about to do, and Cher was the same thing. It was a little easier for me because it was my wife, and cognitively, with the exception of far too many medications for pain, etc., she was fairly clear. So we tried to be as to communicate before doing anything, exactly every move that we were going to do. And then as we executed each move, I reminded Jane, this is now what we're going to do. So we're going to position you here and position you there. With my dad, it was a little bit different because he became very nonverbal, and so we tried to, we did things in a group, but it wasn't as though he was absorbing it, and that was very, very, very difficult. We just tried to, as we moved in coordination. We were moving, him around as a team. Because I've come from a large family of kids, so we had to coordinate with each other about what we were doing.
Karen, any thoughts to add?
I think Chris and Shara have covered it off beautifully, and maybe just accessing, your local Alzheimer's Society and Behavioral Supports Ontario, they can be a really great resource as well, to provide some situation-specific advice, and there's no cost for that, which is an amazing resource. I know for myself, it's always good to think about, what language are you using? So if you're trying to get somebody to the toilet, and I know I've been saying to someone, don't sit, and all they hear is sit. And so now they're sitting and we're not at the toilet yet. And I'm like, oh, that was my, okay, maybe I could choose a better way to kind of figure that out. Or I've had a client that I worked with before where I would say, okay, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to go on 3. And he would sit there and look at me and go 4, 5, 6. And I would think, okay, like it's not working what I'm doing. I need to try something different. So really just problem solving, having that sense of humor, trying to keep staying safe and thinking, yeah. And I mean, we know dementia is not static. So somebody is, going to be more or less impaired kind of as their day goes along. So just trying to meet people where they are, as everyone else has already said.
Yeah, that's great. Chris, you put your hand up. Did you want to
Yeah,
add something?
I just wanted to add one thing. I had to really consciously make sure I was speaking in a very kind, loving way, even though I could have been in a situation where I wanted to jump out a window, or whether I was really frustrated. And we had some very difficult experiences where I really had to go, okay, now we're going to do this thing, even though I was ready to scream. And the times when I couldn't do that, it was way more difficult to do anything. It was far easier when I was soft and patient.
Yeah.
Not so easy to do, but important.
Tone matters sometimes, right? And even when we're frustrated, we get frustrated.
Yeah,
not
that's why
easy.
self-care is so important. Yeah, that's why self-care is so important.
Absolutely. So we had a couple questions come in around those tube sheets that you shared, Taryn. I'm maybe not using the correct term.
That's okay.
Just really around like, is there a specific product that people can Google? We're not endorsing or promoting any particular brand. We're not sponsored by the tube sheet people.
Slide sheet hasn't gotten to us.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But is there a particular kind, or where can folks find that type of supportive device and maybe some others?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, if you just have a quick Google on like slide sheets for bed mobility, one of them is the Swift slide sheet, so that when I had the picture of the one that makes onto the bed, it would fit on like a twin size or a hospital bed. So that can be really helpful because it's always on the bed. I saw in the chat somebody was like, what's the difference? Is there one that you like more than the other? And I think that both kinds are good. It just depends on what you want to do with them and the environment that you have. So something that makes onto the bed, may not fit your bed, so that might not work for you. Yeah, so it's really just depending on what you're going to use it for. But the ones that make onto the bed can be helpful because it always is just on the bed and it stays right there. So that can be helpful. And then it can be, if you have staff who are coming in to provide care, they don't have to go and get the other one and find it and put it underneath the person. It's always ready to go.
That's great. Thank you. I'm wondering, there's been a couple questions too around other devices that are available. And certainly we don't know anybody's unique situation and can't suggest or prescribe any device for any one person's scenario. But I'm wondering if you can maybe speak to things like poles or grab bars or shower chairs or things along those lines that might be, useful in different contexts.
And again, it's going to depend on the person that you're caring for. From my experience, having a lift chair, can be very helpful to help somebody get up so that you're not basically going down and pulling them up. So something that's going to kind of mechanically lift them up, you can rent them. They are also available for purchase, so that it can be a bit expensive depending on how fancy you want to be. But that can sometimes be a good option to help, with dignity, and also to give to help you kind of assist that person up. So depending on the person that you're caring for, that can sometimes be a nice option. And it really just depends on how much the person can help you as well. So if you feel like you're doing a lot or all of the work and they're not really helping you, then that's always a good kind of cue to have an assessment or have someone come in and say, what could we modify to make things a lot easier as well. So yeah, and I mean the poles, you can put a pole beside your bed or beside your couch. A lot of times people have trouble getting up off of their couch. So even just looking at the couch and thinking, is it really low? Have you had it for 40 years and it's really squishy and you kind of like get sucked back in and you're down and it's really hard to get that person up and out? So you can Google, I hate to say Amazon, but you can go online and, look for couch blocks or couch raisers, and they just go underneath the legs of your couch and just raise it up. So that those are pretty cheap and cheerful. And you can implement that, and then it's always easier to get up from a higher surface. So to look even just around at your furniture and say, do none of our chairs have have arms that the person can push off from to help them? Is our couch really low? How can we do some of those modifications? You can always add, the floor to ceiling poles. They're usually just held in by tension. So those can be really helpful too. And you can kind of put those anywhere you want to, as long as you have a nice ceiling surface. They're good beside beds, beside couches. Grab bars are always great, non-slip, like a mat for the tub or the shower. A shower chair can be helpful if somebody gets fatigued and doesn't necessarily want to be standing. Handheld shower head is invaluable. If you've ever tried to shower someone else and didn't have a handheld shower head, you will get very wet and there will be water everywhere. So that's always helpful as well. I do see a lot of people talking about falling into the chat. How do you help somebody fall? They can't get up. I'm really leery of that, to be candid, because we don't know if they've had a fall. Have they injured something? A lot of the times it can be helpful to call for non-urgent lift assist, or you're calling 911 itself. If you think they're okay, but we just can't physically get them up, calling for the non-urgent lift assist can be helpful, and the firemen will basically come and help you assess that person and make sure they haven't fractured anything or injured anything, and help you get them up rather than you trying to do it yourself.
No, I think that's a really important tip that when I chat with caregivers as I'm traveling around, and we do talk about folks that have fallen, many people don't realize that that's an option. And so we try to manhandle our person, or we injure ourselves trying to get them up. And there are emergency services are available to you. Sometimes as caregivers, we feel embarrassed or like we're taking up someone's time, or maybe a little guilty about calling, but that's really what they're there for as well. So if you do have a situation where someone has fallen, and we've got comments in the chat coming through, like, I've used this and it's wonderful, save your back, save your body, and make sure your person as well, like to Taryn's point, that they didn't hurt themselves somewhere else that maybe we can't see and we're not prepared to assess, because we're not doctors and we're not paramedics and emergency persons. So that is always available to folks around the province of Ontario. So don't hesitate to make that call if and when you need it.
Yeah, and then you think, proactively and say, okay, so this person is having falls. Why are they having falls? Are they sliding out of their wheelchair? Maybe we need to change their wheelchair. Is it their medication? Like, let's look at what is causing them to fall. Yeah. So I think that is also good. So after the fall, kind of taking a look and seeing, okay, why do we think they fell? Do we need to go back to the doctor? Do we need to do medication review? Did they just start something new? A lot of times too, with folks with dementia, I mean, I've had clients before who did fall and injured themselves, but they didn't really show that. And it wasn't until they went to the doctor and the doctor said, this person has a fracture. They're injured, but they didn't, display the pain the way that you might think. So
your number may differ from community to community if there's a specific service for this, but you can always call 911. And they'll go through a list of questions with you. So don't worry, people aren't going to necessarily rush with lights and sirens in all situations. But you can call 911 if someone has fallen and you're not sure if they're injured or you're not comfortable helping them get up, and they'll walk you through the process and let you know what to expect. I'm wondering, Chris or Shara, if you have any thoughts on some of those devices that Taryn's shared, if those are things that maybe you've used, any of those polls or those other tips and things that maybe have come in handy in your caregiving experience with your loved ones, moving them around and supporting them in their spaces.
Go ahead, Shara.
It's yeah. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yes, we found a chair in the shower to be really helpful, and grab bars. We also had one of the chairs that go over a toilet, so my dad didn't have to bend down as far and it had the arms on it. My dad also tended to faint here and there, so finding ways to support him, and in the end, he was never walking alone. There was always someone right beside him, ready to be there in case he ended up fainting or whatever it was that was happening at that time. But yeah, and there were things throughout, and not necessarily physical, but even the video monitors, so we could monitor him and not be there. But we also had an alarm under his bed that rang wherever we were. So if he did get up in the night, or if his legs swung down off the bed, it rang and we could go see if he was okay, or we could monitor it on the video. And see if there was anything, or if he just happened to get up and he was going to go back down to sleep or whatever it was. So there were quite a few things, and I do agree with the shower head. It's detrimental because it is hard showering someone without a shower head. And there's a time when my dad wouldn't have a shower because it was too much. It's overwhelming for some people with cognitive impairments. So also just assisting him to get into the bathtub and out of the bathtub. And those grab bars were detrimental for that, and finding ways to lift him properly to help him in and out of the tub. But there's also great devices like walk-in tubs and that kind of stuff. But yeah, we made do with what we had and with the resources we had at the time.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, excuse me, Jen. We had a lot of that stuff. We had a lot of bars, particularly around the bath, in the bathroom. Jane was a bath girl, and she wanted to have one more bath before she passed away. And we got this magnificent chairlift that sit in the tub because we couldn't afford to get one of those with the open doors. So this chairlift was just perfect. So it lifted straight to the top of the tub, and we got her, bum on there and lifted her legs around and got her in that tub, in and out much easier. And the joy it gave her having that last VitaBath tub was worth its weight in gold. It was really, really special, and I'll never forget it. And that chair that lifted her up, it's got a back. You could move the back forward and back and up and down. It was an incredibly important piece of equipment for us. Yeah, some of the enabling stuff has such meaning.
Mm-hmm. It does. It's wonderful when you're able to provide some additional supports to give them those things that are really meaningful to them, like having a bath, where sometimes we don't think about that because we're able-bodied and we just do when we do. But when our loved ones have a passion or a love of something, to be able to give them that back while using some supportive devices and keeping ourselves safe is also so very important. We're at 1:00 now. So we're going to wrap up, but I do want to say again, a sincere thanks to Taryn and Chris and Shara for joining us today, sharing your knowledge and expertise, your personal stories and your tips and strategies. So many wise moments and things that folks can take away to hopefully support them in their roles as caregivers. So thank you so much for joining us today.